Nelly the Dragon is a Disney character whose only appearance is in one episode of a show called Quack, which aired in 1996. Never heard of it? That's okay, neither did I until fairly recently. While her time on screen is very short-lived, Nelly shares a lot in common with her pear-shaped Disney counterpart, the Reluctant Dragon. Both share a similar appearance and design, but that's not to say that Nelly is a complete rehash or rip-off of the Reluctant Dragon. She is still very much her own character, as you'll see throughout the video. So let's talk about Nelly the Dragon, and why she's the most criminally underused pear-shaped dragon, like, ever. Starting with Le Plot Summary. This episode of Quack, titled Leader of the Quack, follows Donald Duck and the gang on their way to Quaintinia, a medieval town that never evolved past wooden houses and big stone castles. It's also here in the camper van where we get introduced to our McMuffin of the episode, the Super Atomic Hot Hots, which... Donald's nephews? Oh, I always thought they were his kids, cause Daisy was there with them? Anyway, they use this volatile candy to speed up Donald's van, and within 5 seconds they crash land straight into Quaintinia, upon which Donald is immediately hailed as their new king. What? So it turns out that some time ago in the past, an oblivious Donald accidentally set off a catapult during a dragon attack, which then hit a nearby dam, and the flood extinguished the flame of Nelly. Cursed dragon of the mount! Well, I guess you could say that was damn lucky. And since we're working with medieval laws and regulations, whoever defeats the dragon is now king. But this spells trouble for the villain of this episode, who's apparently been ruling over Quaintinia in Donald's absence. And this character is called... Oh god, I can't even say his name without laughing.
Donald has come back. What I, Prince Gaylord?
Yeah, I know, I did some research and it turns out that Gaylord is an actual name that was used around the 19th century. I just find it really funny. Donald is then warned by Sir Harold, oh, that's the name of this knight dude by the way, that Gaylord may try to assassinate him, which draws the curiosity of Daisy, who decides to go check out Gaylord and see if he really is the vile ruler that Sir Harold claims him to be. The next 3 or 4 minutes of the episode sees the pack getting into a bunch of medieval-style games, so there's not really much to add, like, plot-wise here, aside from Donald's nephews unknowingly selling a bag of the Atomic Hot Hots candy to Gaylord, who brings them back to his tower. That, and a little later on, the people of the village start to get angry at Donald's ridiculous decrees he makes while being king. Those are all pretty important, but not as important as what happens next. That's right, finally, after 15.5 minutes! Wow, it really feels a lot shorter than that while watching the episode, but I guess the bar doesn't lie. We finally get a proper appearance of Nelly the Dragon, the absolute shining gem of this episode, and I know that sounds incredibly biased. So Daisy discovers Nelly at the top of the tower and bumps into Gaylord after running away from her. So Gaylord ties her up and has an epiphany of using the Hot Hots candy to reignite Nelly's flame. But while he's gone, Nelly unties Daisy and sets up a tea table, which is just such a wholesome detail, but I'm gonna try and hold off talking about Nelly as a character till later. Which is gonna be difficult. Anyway, Nelly explains to Daisy that her and Gaylord used to have something special between them, but after the incident with Donald accidentally extinguishing her flame, Gaylord doesn't pay much attention to her anymore. So Daisy suggests some good old assertiveness training. Only problem is, Nelly doesn't get much time to practice as Gaylord returns with the Hot Hots, which Nelly scoffs without a second thought, thus bringing back her fire in a rather cartoonish manner. Like, after the whole steaming kettle bit you see throughout a lot of cartoons, Nelly bends over and blows fire through her legs, which is just such a bizarre and wacky thing that just kinda happens, I guess. Oh no, Nelly, you burnt all the drawings that were on the wall! Anyway, during the chaos of Nelly getting her fire back, Daisy escapes the castle, so Gaylord sends Nelly to go kill Donald, which takes us neatly into what I suppose you could call the final act of the episode, which is honestly so cartoony and bonkers, but works very effectively at tying up everyone's little arcs, especially Nelly's. So while Nelly goes around setting stuff on fire, which she really enjoys doing, Daisy goes to tell Donald she knows how to stop Nelly, but only Donald can do it. So what they end up doing is pushing Donald near Nelly, who politely apologizes before nearly making some roast duck, only for Donald to gift her with some chocolates, which of course throws a wrench into Gaylord's plans, and this basically begins this gift-giving battle between Donald and Gaylord for Nelly's affection. And I'm sorry, but I really need to mention how cute of Nelly it is for her to try and show her appreciation for all these gifts as quickly as they're being given to her. I mean, not gonna lie, that's how I treat a dragon. Like a queen.
Oh my! Thank you, but what's a girl to do? I don't deserve. You're too kind.
This neat little interaction reaches its peak when Donald brings out a giant present, only for Gaylord to counter with a literal castle wrapped in a bow tie. So what can Donald offer Nelly that's even bigger than a castle? Well, by killing two birds with one stone because he hates being king, Donald gives Nelly the crown, which really annoys Gaylord to the point of insulting Nelly and jumping on her tail. And you know what that means when you insult the one and only true queen of Quaintinia.
It means we're going to die!
Unfortunately though, that's the last we see of Nelly, because it then transitions to the Quack Pack making their way back home. The last mention we get of Nelly is when one of the kids, again I can't remember their names, saying that Nelly will make a great queen, and apparently she bought their whole supply of Hot Hots, although the money they got in return has incredibly low value in their current economy, so it's practically useless. So that's pretty much the entire plot of the episode covered, and overall I think it's a pretty neat little adventure that has a lot of fun with its premise of being set around the medieval period. Though, if I'm being honest, there are a couple of things that bother me plot-wise. If the people of Quaintinia weren't happy with Donald's ridiculous decrees and collectively decided to overthrow him because of them, then why didn't they do the same while Gaylord was in charge? It's hard to come up with a definitive answer for this because the only information we get regarding Gaylord's rule over Quaintinia in Donald's absence is that he's been ruling over Quaintinia in Donald's absence. There's just nothing to work with as to how exactly Gaylord oppressed the people, and why they never took action against him. Also, does Gaylord have entitlement to Quaintinia's throne? Because after Nelly loses her fire, Sir Harold says that Donald is now their true king, but Gaylord, without Nelly's fire, becomes their ruler somehow? No, wait, but if Gaylord befriended Nelly before she got her fire extinguished, which is true because Nelly explains that to Daisy, then does that mean that in the flashback, Nelly was sent by Gaylord to attack the people of Quaintinia as an attempt to become their ruler? But then becomes their ruler anyway? These aren't contradictions necessarily, just small yet important gaps in the story that are missing. But yeah, those are my only complaints really. Everything else is pretty sound. Now then, since you're all caught up and have context for who Nelly is and how she plays into the episode and that, I get to gush about her as a character now. Let's start with her character design. So first and foremost, Nelly is what's commonly referred to as a pear-shaped dragon, which is a popular term used to describe a bottom-heavy anthropomorphic bipedal dragon. Other terms used to describe them include bottom-heavy and friend-shaped. Nelly shares very similar proportions to Disney's first pear-shaped dragon, the Reluctant Dragon, though a slight criticism I have with Nelly, and to a lesser degree the Reluctant Dragon as well, is her size is quite inconsistent throughout the episode. She is mostly consistent in size and proportion while in Gaylord's tower and in the fields towards the end of the episode, but as she's destroying the houses, suddenly she's 1,000 feet tall. Like, is that house incredibly small, or did Nelly grow 5 times bigger in between shots? Either way, it's an inconsistency. But criticisms aside, what's very interesting about the choice to have her be pear-shaped in this is that it plays a more subtle role in the episode. You see, as we discussed in the Reluctant Dragon video, the reason he's pear-shaped is to completely subvert your expectations that he's a vicious monster like in the boys' book. With Nelly, however, on a surface level, it seems like there's no reason at all for her to look the way she does. That is, of course, until you consider the clues laid out in the episode. When we first see Nelly in the flashback, she actually has a shape that resembles the dragon that Maleficent transforms into. But when Daisy finds Nelly later on, she's a lot more plump and round, and this is for a few reasons. Firstly, it's important to note that ever since Nelly's fire went out, Gaylord stops paying her much attention, and after she has an angry outburst when Gaylord calls her beast, he completely dismisses her feelings and instead bribes her with the Hot Hots, which she gulps down without second questioning, showing she's clearly used to being told to shut up and accept gifts. And secondly, Gaylord compensates for his lack of attention to Nelly by constantly bringing her gifts, including food like live sheep and likely chocolates, which she says are her favourites.
Chocolates? My favorite!
It's kinda sad, honestly, but the reason Nelly looks the way she does is because of neglect and manipulation. Basically, the short version of what I'm trying to say is she got fat. Well, I hesitate to use that word because of negative connotation, but it's not her fault. We're gonna cover this a little more with her personality, but yeah, basically the reason she's pear-shaped, yeah, that's better, is for an entirely different and quite frankly, darker purpose than the reluctant dragon. On a brighter note, let's discuss the other aspects of her appearance. So aside from the obvious, Nelly has quite a distinguished look that sticks out in a way that's very unique. She's got orange frizzy hair, blue scales, black spine ridges, and her clothing appears to resemble that of gym wear. She has a headband which keeps her hair up, sporty sneakers with socks, and a nice matching tank top to complete the look. One of the more subtle details I find rather interesting about Nelly's design though is actually her face. Unlike the more cone-shaped approach with the reluctant dragon, Nelly has more of a snake-like quality going on. Notice the little bump on the end of her snout along with her big expressive cheeks and yellowish eyes. She bears a very similar resemblance to Disney snakes like Car from Jungle Book and Hiss from Robin Hood, which is very interesting because while taking screenshots of Nelly for this video, I actually found a very neat little detail that's very blink and you miss it. Take a look at her eyes in this screenshot when she takes offense for being called Beast by Gaylord. Look familiar? This could be a little Easter egg for those paying attention, or perhaps it's just a subtle nod towards the other Disney snakes. I'll let you decide. So Nelly is already quite visually striking as a character design, but what about her as a dragon? You know, like how we say person, but I said dragon because dragons have feelings too. Well, throughout her short appearance in the episode, Nelly is mostly seen as being rather jolly and excitable, both when she's being hospitable to Daisy at Gaylord's tower, and also when she's committing war crimes upon Quaintinia. It's like she doesn't quite know right and wrong, instead she does whatever she's told based on whether or not she's being treated well or just not being threatened by people who want her dead. Which makes a lot of sense when you consider the fact that Gaylord was the first and only person before Donald came back who didn't try to kill her on sight, which also unfortunately made it a lot easier for Gaylord to manipulate Nelly. She was seen as nothing more than a monster by humanity and then nothing but a weapon by Gaylord, which, for a show that's pretty much a fun comedy, is really sad when you think about it. Like, I genuinely feel bad for Nelly. And the really sad part about all this is she doesn't even realize she's being used. I mean, how would she know after being treated like a monster all her life? She's happy and content knowing that for once, somebody isn't trying to kill her. Somebody is actually showing her some form of affection. It's fake affection, so Gaylord could use her as a weapon, but to Nelly, it's affection nonetheless. It's established too in the episode that both Nelly and Gaylord share a romantic relationship of some kind, and I'm not exactly sure how that works, but it's a thing. Though, when Nelly loses her fire, Gaylord neglects her, yet still gives her gifts to keep up the facade that he actually cares about her. Which does bring up a bit of an interesting question. If Gaylord was ruling over Quaintinia before Donald came back, then why does he keep Nelly around in his tower? My best guess for this is I suppose he was hoping to come up with a way to bring back her fire in the meantime? You see, when I was making notes for this video, I originally had the idea that Gaylord was the one who gave the gym-style outfit to Nelly, and maybe told her to get some exercise as a way of getting her fire back. But that theory was immediately shut down when I took these screenshots of her during the flashback. As you can see, Nelly is still wearing her outfit here. So yeah, I think this falls back on the whole gaps within the story thing, but the point is, Nelly is being neglected, and this is even more apparent when she has an emotional outburst when Gaylord calls her Beast. As explained earlier, Gaylord's solution to any sign of Nelly being unhappy is to shove a gift or food in her face with no regard as to how she feels. This would also explain why Nelly comes across as quite ditzy too, seeing as she accepts any kind of gift without question. Again, because nobody showed her such generosity before Gaylord came along. And yet, despite being rejected by humanity, manipulated, and neglected, Nelly is shown to be quite polite and well-mannered. Well, aside from slurping tea I guess, if you wanted to be real nitpicky about it, but she's very kind and hospitable towards Daisy, untying her, giving her a chair, and making her some tea, which I think has to be a subtle nod towards the reluctant dragon, right? I mean, come on, how could it not be? Though I think a very important detail to note that proves Nelly's politeness even further is at the peak of the gift-giving battle towards the end of the episode, when Donald tries to offer Nelly a flower, she burns the flower instead of Donald, pretty much going against Gaylord's demands. She could have easily set him on fire here, and yet she chose not to, likely because she respects and appreciates all the gifts that Donald had given to her. And yeah, I know, you could say in a meta sense that Nelly can't burn Donald to a crisp here because the show can't continue if he's dead, and you're right, but I prefer to think it's because deep down, Nelly is a sweetheart and recognizes generosity. Like, she's not an evil dragon, not even close. Nelly is a victim of two simultaneous evils, prejudice from humanity and manipulation by Gaylord. It's what makes her the misunderstood hero of this story. I want to root for Nelly. I want Nelly to have a happy ending because after all the stuff she's been put through, whether she knew it or not, she's a dragon that deserves a happy ending, which thankfully she got. I suppose the moral of the story here is just show some respect for dragons. We're not tools for destruction, we have feelings too, okay?
I am my own dragon. I choose for myself.
With all this in mind, I think it's more than fair to say that Nelly is actually a pretty strong and well-written character. So why is it that we only see Nelly in one episode of this 39 episode long season of a show? It is an absolute shame as a fan of dragons, and by extension a fan of misunderstood and heroic dragons, that she's this underutilized when she has so much potential as a recurring character. It's like opening a pack of your favorite candy only to just eat one of them and then never eat the rest. While I don't have a strong stance on Quack as a show, and I'm not gonna lie, I simply don't have the time or the will to watch the whole thing, but I see no reason why we couldn't have gotten a sequel to this episode, because Nelly's story doesn't have to end with her being the Queen of Quaintinia. In fact, this would provide a great starting point for the plot of an episode. So my whole idea with this is you have Nelly who starts out as a tool for destruction, manipulated by a guy who just wants power, which then develops into Nelly standing up for herself and breaking the shackles of her oppressor, and unintentionally becoming the Queen. But the new problem this would naturally create that needs to be resolved is because Nelly is now the queen of the very people she was forced to attack, and who also hated the rule of the vile Prince Gaylord, they would naturally hate her for being the queen, and this could lead to Nelly sending a letter to Daisy asking for help with her situation. Also, considering how Gaylord just kind of ran off at the end of the initial episode, you could bring him back as the main villain with a revenge plot. Maybe the reason why the people of Quaintinia are upset with Nelly is because Gaylord, in a clever cartoonish disguise, is going around convincing people that she's a bad queen, which would then lead to the people conspiring to overthrow Nelly, and perhaps they unknowingly put Gaylord back in charge. Maybe at the end of the episode, after the Quack Pack help Nelly uncover Gaylord and thwart his plans, Nelly, like Donald, realizes she doesn't like being queen to a bunch of people who don't really respect her, and instead passes it on to a worthy candidate. Most likely Sir Harold, cause he's the only other character that would fit the title. I mean, who else would it be? It sure as hell wouldn't be the poison tester. With nowhere else to go, Daisy could offer to bring Nelly back to their town, which could then lead into a possible second sequel episode where Nelly has to adapt to the modern environments of the current times outside of Quaintinia. Now, just to clarify, I'm not saying this is exactly how a continuation of the initial episode should go. I'm just trying to demonstrate the lost potential here by throwing out a couple of my ideas, so feel free to use these and add to them as you see fit. But hey, as much as I wished we'd gotten to see more of Nelly, at least what we got of her is really good, and that definitely counts for something.
Oh, that's the best!
So, to end things off here, I think it's time we do something that we've not done for a while, and that of course is curse screenshots. Anyways, I think that's about everything for now, unless I forgot something? Oh, socials. Check out Le DeviantArt and Le Twitter below. I think that's it. Oh no! I completely forgot! I left beef in the washing machine the whole time I was making this video! Oops.
Unbelievable.
Okie dokie, check out my socials, links in the description. Thanks for watching, goodbye! She was seen as nothing more than a monster by humanity, and then nothing but a Gaylord. Nothing but a Gaylord!